Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. I think my microphone is a little bit low. I'll move it a bit closer. We have Tiny Demolition Lover, great to see you. Hope you're well. We have Enzo the God, great to see you. Arl, great to have you on. Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you. Bill, great to have you on. Steve, great to see you. Lenin, great to have you on. CJM, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Boomerage, great to see you. The Frickle Punny, great to have you on. You and me, great to see you too. We also have Killer, great to have you on, moderating. Hope you're well tonight. We have G88, great to see you. We have also Aki's Mad, great to have you on. Aki's Mad. English Viking, great to see you. Fearless Wolf, great to have you on once again. Hope you're well. We have Gert Yun, great to see you. John O'Sullivan, great to see you. Michelle, great to have you on. Mega Harry Bomb, great to see you. Derek, great to have you on. Adam Lee, great to have you on too. Adam, hope you're well. We also have Pete Robbins, great to see you. Hope you're well, Pete. We have Ruth as well, great to see you, Ruth. Plum Duff, great to have you on. And so many more. We're up to 184, so remember, guys, to smash that like button. And if you'd like to support the stream, you can hit me with a super chat and I'll read it out, of course, during the stream. And I hope everyone is very well. I hope you had a good weekend. Remember, next Sunday we have our Sunday brunch. Sunday brunch is back, and I hope you'll be able to join that. But I'll see you before that. I'll see you on Friday as well. But anyway, let's jump into the stream tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Brexit. We're going to talk about a little bit about Priti Patel probably, but a number of stories have jumped up. The election is just around the corner. So on Thursday, the 5th, there is the election, which hopefully will deliver the Tories a bloody nose, in the sense that it will punish the government. People are quite angry, it seems. Whether that will result in the Tories losing a number of seats remains to be seen. But it seems the Tories and their enablers in the media are trying to do everything they can. They're throwing the kitchen sink at this. You know, what I found ironic recently was how I think I mentioned this in one of the videos or in a previous stream, how up to this stage, when they were talking about Partygate, the Tories and their friends online and in the media were saying, no, just move on from this. It was just a piece of cake. Anyway, there's a war on. You know, we need to move on. Stop talking about Partygate. Stop talking about Boris Johnson breaking the law. Stop talking about Boris Johnson receiving a fine. Stop talking about Boris Johnson writing the rules and then breaking them on numerous occasions. Just move on from it. And now they're obsessed with Keir Starmer having a beer. And and today I did a video where Nadine Dorris posted a picture of Keir Starmer with Dobson. Oh, what's his name? Frank Dobson. And Frank Dobson sadly died some years ago. And she thought he was breaking the rules in 2020. I think Frank Dobson died in 2019. So obviously it was not a case of breaking the rules. But that's Nadine Dorris. I think eventually she took down the tweet. So she left it up there long enough for people to realize what an idiot she is. And then she decided, okay, I'll take it down. Or somebody told her to take it down. So they're throwing... And then also the ridiculous, disgusting misogyny where they were claiming that, look, and I think these are Tory enablers doing it. I don't think they're doing it without some sort of support from the Conservatives, trying to convince the public that Angela Rayner is distracting Boris Johnson when the two of them are in the House of Commons in order to put him off his game. If Boris Johnson if it's impossible for Boris Johnson to resign because of the war on, and he has to focus on that, then how could he be distracted by legs? Valerio, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi, Max. Will you have a stream with Novara Media? Look, I've reached out to, I think I reached out to Aaron Bastani, who is one of the I think he's actually one of the founders of Novara Media. So I think I sent him a message some time ago asking if he'd like to do a live stream with myself, or to do a Sunday brunch. So I haven't heard anything back, but that was some time ago. So I will send a message again to him, or to Michael, I forget his surname, but one of the other hosts of Novara Media. And it'd be interesting to get their take on the election results, maybe, or it depends on when they could come on. But it'd be interesting to get their take on some things, because they're a more left-wing organization. So it would be good to get their take. Good, I think it's important to hear as many voices as possible. Thanks so much for that super chat, Valerio. Hope you're well. Naz needs to eat more ostrich. So anyone who doesn't know, Nadine Dorris appeared on a show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where Michael Walker, thanks so much, Mark Williams. Walker, yes. Nadine appeared on this celebrity show where she had to do some pretty horrible things, and it seems she ate an ostrich's anus as some sort of challenge. Yes. I was reading today that the French culture secretary or minister wrote a book on Verdi, and I don't know who there was another minister from another European country that was quoted as having done something. I don't remember what it was. Slightly different to Nadine Dorris. I don't think Nadine was chosen for her cultural ability, her knowledge of cultural issues. Buy your council flat in London for 400. Yes, so this is what I wanted to jump on to first. So as I said at the beginning, Lenan, thank you so much for that tip. Hey, thank you so much. It doesn't appear on the stream, but I see it here on my program. Thank you very much, Lenan. Thanks so much for that support. As I said, the Tories are throwing everything. They're trying to attack Keir Starmer for having a beer during the lockdown period, but obviously the rules were different than when Boris Johnson had his party. Then we have the Angela Rayner misogyny, and we also have this idea that, yes, what we're going to do is we're going to make it easier for people to buy their own homes when, well, there's a shortage of homes, which of course is actually going to drive up the price. What the council need to be doing is building more affordable homes, and the council can only do that if they have support from central government. And over the last number of years, we've seen how, and I've covered it on the channel before, if you look at your local Tory MP and look at their voting record, you'll see that what they've been consistently doing is reducing the powers that councils have and offloading responsibility when it comes to raising taxes. So councils have access to, in a sense, they're not able to raise as many taxes as they want, and they have fewer powers. So it's more and more difficult for councils to raise the money necessary to build affordable housing. And the Tories really are not interested in affordable housing, because what they want to do is they want to create, I think this is part of their plans, to create a middle class where they can hold this threat of your house price may drop if there are too many immigrants, or your house price may drop if there's too much crime, or your house price may drop if there are some social issues. And they're able to hold this over people's heads. And I think this has been part of their plan since the 1980s, to get more and more people into ownership, not because it benefits the people owning the homes, but it's a way of convincing people you have something to lose if you vote for the Labour Party. Your house price will drop. You know, this is something that's very important. If you have a home, you're concerned about the price of that home, if you're going to sell it or if you're going to pass it on to your children. And the Tories know this is something very important for many homeowners, so they will use it as a tool to convince people to come out and vote for the Conservatives as opposed to the Labour Party. Roisin, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Why are American houses always much bigger than UK houses? I think, Steve-O, that's actually a myth. It depends on where you go. So if you go into the countryside, houses will be much bigger because it's cheaper to build them. If you go, you can buy a 5,000 square foot, 500 square meter or whatever house in Wyoming for very cheap. But if you're to buy a house in New York or in Los Angeles, you're going to pay through the nose. So house prices are very expensive in large cities, but they're cheaper out in the country, and you can apply that pretty much to anywhere. So if you want to, I don't know, live in the fields of Yorkshire, it's probably cheaper, a lot cheaper than living in the centre of London or in the centre of Manchester. Or so it's the problem we see is when we watch American TV shows, the houses are huge, but in reality, not many people live in those types of houses unless they're plastic surgeons or something in Hollywood. It's very expensive. Homes are very expensive, and the average is quite. I think it's maybe a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment most people have. But there are probably some people on the stream. Hopefully, there's somebody on the stream from the US who can correct me on that. Get a 1-bed cupboard in New York for $200 a week. Yeah, so it's, and I think TV shows like Friends back in the 1990s, gave us this completely skewed idea of home ownership, where people would be, the apartment that the people in the show Friends were living in was, I don't know, it was humongous, and to have an apartment like that, you would have paid thousands per month, I think, which was not really the case. Also, local tax a year in the US could be $20,000 plus. My goodness. So that's why not many people own large homes or own homes at all. But it's always a tool that the Tories and right-wing parties can use. So it says here, Boris Johnson is considering reviving Margaret Thatcher's right to buy scheme by giving people a chance to purchase their properties they rent through housing associations at a discounted price. These housing associations don't seem to be working out very well. I've seen a lot of complaints about this, where they don't provide the services that people need. In the past, the council house, the maintenance and everything will be done by the council, while these housing associations don't seem to be doing exactly that. I've seen numerous videos online where people are struggling. People are in homes where the walls are leaking. There's water leaking down the walls, mold problems, and then when they call the council or the housing association, nobody turns up, or if they do turn up, it's after an article in the local newspaper, and this is a huge problem. Alistair M. Care, thank you so much for that super chat. Hi Max and chat. Max, keep up the excellent content. Thank you very much for that. Very kind of you. Hope you're well tonight. Genocide Jim, great to see you. Great name. Thanks so much for that super chat as well. It goes on to say here, the idea designed to help generation rent and prove the government is still committed to its conservative principles amid unrest from some backbenchers is being worked up by officials in the number 10 policy unit. Of course, this is right before an election. Okay, it's just some, not red meat, but it's a bit of bait to convince people to come out and vote for the Tories. With reports of up to 2.5 million households could become eligible to buy their own homes at a discount of up to 70%. But housing experts warned the policy amounted to a sell-off of affordable homes during the cost of living crisis and called instead for an increase in house building. So the problem, what happened back in the 1980s and 90s as well, is so people who could afford to buy their own home did that. But many people, what happened as well is many people bought these homes and then sold them off for a profit or rented them out to people. So they became landlords. And this of course, at the beginning was beneficial to a lot of people, but later on it created a housing crisis because you ended up having private landlords charging all sorts of rents, and there was no rent cap, there was no control on this, and people were being fleeced. It goes on to say but housing experts warned the policy amounted to sell-off of affordable housing and the cost of living, and called instead to an increase in house building. Polly Neat, the chief executive of Shelter, criticised the harebrained idea as the opposite of what the country needs. Ministers are also considering whether to allow banks to take into account taxpayer money received by those who claim housing benefit when they are seeking a mortgage. I think it's an attempt to create another housing bubble, maybe. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Someone needs to tell Bozo most renters don't live in properties that would be covered by this, and they are private rents. Look, I don't think this policy is very well thought out, as the chief executive of Shelter said. It's a harebrained idea. This is just, look, we're bringing back right to buy, and it's a bone to throw to the public. Look at what we're doing. We're helping people out. Many people don't want to pay rent. They see rent as money down the drain. So we're going to allow them to buy their homes, but most people will not be able to do that. Thanks so much for that super chat, Magic. Genocide Jim, I love the name once again. Thanks so much for that. The Tories and Labour are dead in Scotland. About time England cottoned on and got rid of them. About time England cottoned on. They're being robbed. I think unless the Labour Party win a massive majority at the next election, I think Labour and the Tories can kiss Scotland goodbye. Because if they scrape by, it's going to be a disaster for the Labour Party. And if you look at the polling, there isn't a surge at the moment taking place in Scotland for the unionist parties like the Labour Party or the Conservatives. There seems to be, what's happening instead, a switch between Conservative to Labour in Scotland, not SNP to Labour or SNP to the Tories, and that would be very concerning. And if you saw SNP switching to Labour, then you could understand that. But the people in Scotland, it seems, even people who would be generally supportive of the union, are looking at Westminster and saying, enough is enough. We can't take any more of this. With Brexit and Boris Johnson, the future is not very bright for the union. And unless Keir Starmer comes up with some real way of convincing people away from that, but also the problem, I think, is for unionist parties like the Labour Party and the Tories in Scotland, is that, I think many Scottish people will look at that and say, okay, even if Keir Starmer wins next election, the Tories will be back the following one. And we'll be stuck with Tories, or we'll be stuck with the Labour Party, parties that we didn't really vote for, but they're making decisions on our behalf. And whether you support the union or not, that's difficult to convince people against. You can... I think a very strong question, a very powerful question, you could ask any member, any supporter of the Labour Party or the Tories in Scotland would be, are you happy that Westminster is making decisions over your head? Because that's the reality on the ground. Yes, the Labour Party have, if they win, even if they win many seats in Scotland, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they won a significant number, the decisions are still being taken by Westminster. Scotland has very little of a role to play in Westminster. So, it's gotten worse with the Tories, But it's not going to really change with the Labour Party. And even if it did somewhat, then it's going to switch back when the Tories are back in power. The Tories have no interest in Scotland. Maybe just what they can get out of it when it comes to energy, but and taxes. But that when it comes to providing something for Scotland, the Tories don't give a crap. And I think it's very difficult for people who vote Tory or vote Labour in Scotland to deal with that issue. It's something they don't confront really. Maybe things were different in the past when the SNP were much smaller and you had a significant number of Tories or a significant number of Labour Party seats in Scotland. Then they could, they had a bit more sway. But in a sense, because the SNP are the biggest party and the SNP want independence, their sway in Westminster is very limited. People will probably disagree with me with the previous statement where I said that MPs from Scotland, Tory MPs or Labour MPs in Scotland had some sort of sway. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but definitely they have zero or almost zero influence over the main parties today. Thanks for the super chat, Genocide Jim. Max in Lux, great to have you on, Max. Hi, Max. Is there that much social housing left to sell in England? Any idea of the rough percentage of housing stock? See you on Sunday. Thanks so much, Max. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think it's extreme. Most of it was sold off before, so most of the housing available at the moment is through private landlords and housing associations. So I don't think the amount of the numbers of people we're talking about who live in council houses that could eventually buy them, I think it's extremely little. Of course, there are a lot of people in council houses and who are renting from the council or from the housing associations, from the housing associations. We're talking about people who would not be in a state to financially to eventually buy their homes, even if they are deeply discounted. Thanks for that super chat, Max and Genocide Jim. Let me just check I didn't miss anyone. Goes on to say ministers are also considering whether to allow banks to help boost housing stocks. The government is contemplating axing the rule that developers must build a set number of affordable houses in favour of making them pay into the infrastructure fund that counsels them to use them to fund their own projects. So a big problem here is, so in the past what would happen is property developers would be forced by law to provide a percentage of their homes as affordable houses. But if the government removed that, then the property developers are not going to provide any affordable housing. They'll just provide premium housing. And this is going to drive up the price of homes everywhere. So it's going to be even more difficult for people to get on the housing ladder. Housing reforms have fallen by the wayside after the government backed down in the face of a huge backlash from Tory MPs over changes to planning rules. There were some planning rules. I remember some years ago there was a bill going through the House of Commons, or a motion going through the House of Commons to, wait till you hear this, was to force landlords to provide homes that are suitable for human habitation. And many Tories voted against that. It's like, and then of course you find out that many of these Tories are landlords, so they own property, or they have portfolios that include property, and of course they're against that because they would lose money. Any regulation is a cost for them, so they obviously in a conflict of interest position, clear conflict of interest. They voted against measures that would protect tenants. The Daily Mail cited a source saying Johnson was very excited about rejuvenating Thatcher's right to buy policy, with the roughly 2.5 million households living in housing association property becoming eligible to buy their homes. Lisa Nandy, Labour's shadow community secretary, called the plan desperate and accused the tired government of repackaging a plan from 2015. She added millions of families in the private rented sector with low savings and facing sky-high costs and rising bills need far more ambitious plans to help them buy their own home. If people are not able to put something aside in order to get a mortgage or to help buy these homes, then they're not going to do that. How you would need to provide almost free housing, and then if you're providing free housing, then you're providing council homes. Right to buy became one of the legacy decisions of the Thatcher's era, and allowed council tenants to purchase their properties at a discounted rate. Critics, however, rounded on the policy, which they said would only worsen the country's shortage of affordable housing. Shelter said that the last 3 months of 2021, nearly 34,000 households in England became homeless, more than 8,000 of them families with children, because they can't afford these homes. They can't afford to rent. The Nate said there could not be a worse time to sell off what remains of our last truly affordable social homes. The living cost crisis means more people are on the brink of homelessness than home ownership. Right to buy has already torn a massive hole in our social housing stock, as less than 5% of the homes sold off have ever been replaced. These half-baked plans have been tried before and they failed. So what happened was 5% of the homes that were sold off were replaced. 5%. Which meant that the market was very limited, and anyone who had a home or two homes was able to rent out their home or rent out their second home and make a killing out of it. Housing expert Henry Pryor suggested the Conservatives were trying to bribe voters with taxpayer-subsidised sale of housing association stock. About half of the homes previously bought under the right to buy are let out for higher rents in the private sector, with thousands of rents being subsidised by the taxpayer, he said. So yes, you have private landlords renting their previously council houses to the private rental market, and the taxpayer is paying for this. Because many people can't afford these rents, so they're being topped up or they're being supported by the state. This is insane. It's the government paying private landlords to provide their homes that were originally council houses. There were a long waiting list for social housing because the government had failed to replace the previous homes sold off under the right to buy, he added. It's social gerrymandering, tempting people with a chance to make a few quid at the expense of the rest of us, and more importantly, those who really need affordable homes. In 2015, the idea of selling off swathes of housing association properties was resurrected by David Cameron's government. At the time, Johnson was London mayor and was lukewarm about the policy. Johnson was not very supportive, but, it might help him maintain support today, so he's going to go along with it. He told the London Assembly back when he was mayor, one of the issues is that it would be potentially extremely costly to this body. We would have to make up the difference. Housing associations are private bodies, as we all know. It would involve massive subsidies. We would need to get the funds to support that. A housing association right to buy scheme was piloted in 2018 in the Midlands, and the Conservatives' last election manifesto said it would consider new pilots, but no more have been pursued. Critics have said that many of the decent housing association properties have already been sold off, and the remaining ones would not be a tempting purchase to current tenants. they need some new ideas, one Tory source complained. Given the cost of living crisis, it's also possible that the prices for housing association properties remain too high for many struggling households. Garrett, thanks so much for that super chat. Immigrants, Max, immigrants, dirty jobbers, dirty jobs, gerbs, kind regards, the gammon Emirati of Phlagistan. Oh my goodness, Garrett. You always have the best ones. Wonderful. Thanks so much for that super chat. Yeah, it's I imagine the gammons, when they see, you know, a boat with refugees on it or immigrants on it, they foam at the mouth. Nigel Farage told me to be angry. The Daily Mail told me to be angry. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I don't know these people. I know that they have nothing, but they're coming. They're coming to take whatever I have. That's what I was told. Thanks so much for that, Gareth. Hope you're well tonight. So, guys, I want to leave that and move on. This is one of the plans Boris Johnson is throwing against the wall, hoping that it will stick, but I think many people will see through it. So let's move on. The privatization of the NHS continues unabated. It says here, NHS ambulance services cut presence at Gatwick Airport and sports venues. And this is, look, as I said before, the Tory plan has been always to sell off the NHS and replace it with the private sector, so that the private sector can make lots of money out of this. This money is refunded, reinvested in the Conservative Party, or senior people within the Conservative Party are given very cushy jobs in the private sector after. That was a bit of a challenge for Max. Yes, it was. It was a Conservator. An NHS ambulance service is cutting back its presence at Gatwick Airport and major sports events, so it has more crews available to answer 999 calls amid unprecedented pressures. The South East Coast Ambulance Service has ended a long-standing arrangement under which Gatwick paid it to have an ambulance car and paramedic on site. It has also decided to limit the number of ambulances and paramedics on standby to deal with medical emergencies at Premier League club Brighton and Hove Albion Amex Stadium, and Goodwood Race Course in West Sussex. It may do the same in other places. SACAM's move, so is the Southeast Coast Ambulance Service move, has prompted speculation that other ambulance services may reduce or end resources at mass spectator events and focus on core work. England's 10 regional ambulance services are under pressure to speed up response times, which have been growing across England, and tackle the growing number of patients who have to wait hours for a crew to arrive, despite in some cases life-threatening emergency. Tim's, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Have a great evening. And I said this before, how, there have been cases where people have had to wait up to 2 hours for an ambulance. And this is unacceptable. But why is this the case? Well, the pandemic, of course, had a huge role to play. But the Tories have been underfunding the NHS since they've come into power. And their whole idea is to outsource, to copy the American model, where, and we've all heard the horror stories of people in the US where they'd had to, people were telling bystanders at an accident site, don't call an ambulance, don't call me an ambulance because I can't afford it. And this is the end game here. This is the goal the Tories want, and it sounds insane and it sounds absurd, And it sounds impossible, but that's what they want. They want to completely privatize the entire NHS. And some of it has already been sold off, of course. Garrett, thanks so much for that super chat. Gammon sees refugees, screams, followed by the word infidel. Me, I'm not. I'm very angry, Max. Had fish fingers for tea, and it was the EU fish. Happy fish. No, it wasn't happy fish because it wasn't British fish. Thanks so much for that. It's if people have to wait a long time for these ambulances, there's a reason. Why is it? Because in some way there aren't enough staff, maybe because of Brexit, because of the ending of freedom of movement, but also I think the core problem here is the cutting back on services because there isn't sufficient funding. For many years, Gatwick paid SACOM for the ambulance car and paramedic at the airport, providing medical cover at both its terminals. The arrangement ended in 2020 when the COVID pandemic saw passenger numbers plummeting. With more people travelling again, Gatwick wanted to restart the service, but SACOM declined, citing the need to concentrate on providing speedy care for the population it serves across Kent, Sussex and North East Hampshire. SECAM confirmed it was examining the level of cover it provides at mass gatherings and events in stadiums to concentrate on improving its response times to 999 calls. For those who don't know, 999 is like what's the American one? 911? Yes. It now only has one ambulance and one member of staff on duty at Amex Stadium. Sources at SACOM said organisations affected by it rethink what would have to increase private medical cover from other providers. There we have it. Increase private medical cover from other providers. Recognising the challenges that we, along with other ambulance trusts, are currently facing, we are reviewing the private medical cover contracts. We have to ensure we provide a fair and equitable service to all, regardless of whether people are in our region, a trust spokesperson said. We will keep monitoring the matter we'll be keeping the matter under review and would like to assure everyone attending the locations affected by those changes that we will continue to receive emergency medical help if needed. And of course, if somebody has an accident or a problem at one of these sites and the ambulance is not available, then they'll have to call one from outside, and this will take time for it to arrive. The Unison Union, which represents 400,000 NHS staff, including ambulance personnel, backed SACOM's move. Football grounds and racecourses should be providing their own medical cover on site, freeing up hard-pressed crews to focus on 999 calls in desperate need of their help. Said, yeah, I understand this and I agree to a certain extent, but people need to go to the hospital either way. And if somebody has an accident at a football ground, for example, it's important that there is. This wasn't a problem before. Why is it a problem now? Because the services are not available. Why are the services not available? Because cutbacks. Because of the Tory-imposed austerity on the NHS. Jim, thanks so much for that super chat. You're coming over for the Indy ref next year. I will indeed. I have my new Brexit passport. No, I have my new Irish passport. I got it last month, so it's ready to go. I need to get it stamped. So I'll definitely be over for 2023. That's when the independence referendum is due to take place, unless it's going to be postponed. I hope it won't. So I'll definitely be over. I have a lot of people to meet. I can't wait. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Fish gets caught by gammon fish. Fish internal thought. I can't believe I'm going to leave this planet as a pile of gammonati excrement. I don't know how to respond to that. Um, maybe maybe Max will do a video. I'm not sure if it's on that, but on the emergency service, yeah, I might see about doing a video on that. But just responding to Garrett's message. Yeah, it's not the best way to go out, to leave this world. Veg Pie, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you once again. Hi Max, last Thursday my friend's carers called 999 at 11:30 a.m. and the ambulance finally turned up at 4:15 p.m. nearly 5 hours. She's home tomorrow. I hope the person is doing well. I hope they're recovering. But 5 hours, that's insane, and it's unacceptable. You know, even if you watch TV, you know, somebody has an accident and within half an hour or 20 minutes the ambulance has arrived. But this is not the reality. 5 hours. Now, of course, and something I covered on the last live stream was how people react to paramedics and medical staff in general. And I'm not saying, of course, not in your friend's case, but many people react in a very negative way towards complaining to the medical staff, almost attacking, verbally abusing the doctors and nurses and the paramedics, which is completely unacceptable. But imagine you're waiting 5 hours, you've been calling and calling and calling, where's the ambulance, and you don't know if it's life-threatening because you're not a paramedic. So most people, if there's a problem, you tend to be maybe overcautious, or you just tend to be, better safe than sorry, and you call an ambulance. And 5 hours, that's the difference between life and death in many situations. And you don't know, the medical staff don't know until they actually arrive. They can get an idea on the phone, but unless they're very familiar with the patient, it could be a life or death situation. And they arrive after 5 hours. The family, the patient are obviously distressed and angry, but they shouldn't be angry with the staff. They should be angry with who is ultimately responsible, the health secretary and the government. Unfortunately, many people don't seem to go up that far with their anger. They limit it to the people on the ground. Thanks for that super chat, and I wish your friends, the person involved, a speedy recovery. The Tomaleg, thanks so much for that super chat. Looking forward to you and Phil. Yes, if everything should be good to go, next Sunday, where our next super chat, reading the super chat, next live stream, the Sunday brunch will be with Phil and Michael Lambert should be as well, but I'll confirm that over the next couple of days. But Phil will be we'll be talking about Brexit. We'll be probably talking about the results of the election, how that will affect the Labour Party, the Conservatives, Boris Johnson. Will Boris Johnson still be around as Prime Minister? Well, probably, but we'll see how that goes. But definitely, guys, do check out the next Sunday brunch. Phil will be our special guest. And the Sunday brunch is going really well. We've got a lot of very big names on, and it seems you guys seem to like it. It's just an hour, so it doesn't take up too much time, but we managed to talk about a good few topics in that short amount of time. Thanks for that super chat, and hope to see you then. We have Magic again. Thanks so much, Magic. If you have an accident near a hospital, it could take 2 hours to get an ambulance outside the grounds. 5 minutes if you are inside, then send a porter. And yes, and many people are resorting to just going by car, getting a taxi, if it's not too serious. But then once again, you don't know, if somebody has fallen, maybe they have damaged their back. It could be internal bleeding. It could be a stroke or something. So it's important not, to have the maybe in some cases not to move somebody you don't know until the medical staff check this person out. And there was, I remember a video, I think it was Channel 4 from last year during a live stream. I showed it to you guys. There was a lady who had been lying on her floor for 5 or 6 hours because she couldn't move. An elderly lady. Another person who was outside for a number of hours. It was during the summer, so it wasn't cold, but you can imagine if it was in winter. Garrett, thanks so much for that super chat. Well, let me see if I didn't miss anyone else. Thanks, Magic. A serious note, Holby City depicted the reality recently. They did an episode where it was a single ambulance and multiple emergencies. It was good to see the media depicting the reality of austerity. Very good. I remember Holby City from the 2000s or the 1990s, so that was a long time ago. Things have changed, but that's important. I don't know if they had said it was due to cuts. I think there's always a risk for these TV shows. They don't want to get involved in politics, but they have to represent the reality. Otherwise, it's fantasy. It's not fantasy you're watching. It's a real drama, and it has to be as close as possible to reality. Anyway, I want to show you this clip from LBC where it says here, Dr. Rachel Ward of the Rebuild GP campaign insists that colossal GP waiting times have been a problem for some time, and they're not going away until the government works to increase the number of GPs in the UK. With Brexit and the cuts to the NHS, there are fewer GPs as well. GPs, it's difficult to recruit them. A lot of doctors don't want to become GPs because of the stresses involved and the long hours. So the government need to do something about that. Well, let's hear what Dr. Rachel had to say.
Should people grow used to the idea that if they try and ring at 8 o'clock in the morning to book an appointment, they'll either be in a queue for an hour or told to call back the next week, as happens in some areas, or in my specific issue of having to wait 3 weeks for a phone call about a child's health issue? Is that what we should come to expect now?
I don't think we should, because I think we all want better than that, don't we? I think we shouldn't. It is, I think, but let's not kind of kid ourselves with the fact that this has been somehow a lot better pre-COVID, because it was absolutely normal to wait 3 weeks for an appointment then, and this has been a problem for some time. But I think at the moment, unless we really put some strategies in place to increase the number of GPs, this is not going to go away, and that's why we as GPs, we don't want people to wait 3 weeks to speak to us about their child. We want to give better care than that. We want our complex patients to have more time from us. But in order to do that, we need to increase the number of GPs we have.
Are too many people coming to you, do you think? Too many people ringing the GP in the first instance when they could treat themselves or do something else, go to a pharmacy?
I think there is an element of that. I think our attitude to health has very much changed over the last couple of years. I think people want reassurance more regularly. They want reassurance over minor health conditions very frequently. But at the same time, we are by no means blaming patients here as to the reason of the increased demand. Because a lot of the time it's because of the lack of doctors rather than patients' behaviour.
And, Brexit is not helping this because they've pulled up the drawbridge and say we don't want foreigners coming here anymore. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Max, the ambulance service staff arrived at one patient who said, I've been laying here for 3 hours, Is that a record? To which the paramedic replied, I really wish it was, mate. Holby City episode. Thanks for that super chat. Thanks for that info. Once again, it's great that the media, even if it's drama, is covering this, and I think it's very powerful this way because so many people watch this, so many people are fans of these shows, and it's presented in a non-political way. But if you're a Tory and you watch that, you probably maybe realize maybe we're part of the problem here. For some, yes, but maybe for most, no. So, guys, I want to move on. Of course, the elections are just around the corner, and as I said at the beginning, Boris Johnson is throwing everything he can at the, including the kitchen sink. No, I want to focus on where is it? No, was it? It wasn't here. No, I think it was this clip.
Elsie.
Yes, so this is a video I actually have dropping tomorrow, but I wanted to show you some of it now. So this was Boris Johnson was challenged on the cost of living crisis, and he was presented an example of a lady in her 70s, 77 years old, I think it is. She, wait till you hear this. She is cutting back at the moment, and she's relying on something that Boris Johnson just lies about. Well, have a listen.
Elsie is 77. She's a widow and she's a pensioner who lives in a council house. She receives a pension of £170 a week. Her energy bills have gone, get this, from £17 a month to £85 a month.
Yeah.
She will pay an additional £816 a year. To cut down on spending, Prime Minister, Elsie has now resorted to eating one meal a day.
This is insane. This is disgusting. So this elderly woman, 77 years old, can't, in order to make sure she's able to pay her bills, because she doesn't want her power to be cut off. She doesn't want her gas to be cut off. And she also doesn't want to have this sword of Damocles over her head. Will I be able to pay the bills? She has cut back on her meals, where she has just one meal a day. This is somebody who has worked all their life, probably, 77 years old, okay, given so much to society, and this is the way she's treated.
She's 77 years old. She's losing weight. She goes to the supermarket at the end of the day to buy yellow sticker discounted items. She gets up early in the morning to use her Freedom Bus Pass to stay on buses all day to avoid using energy at home.
Boris Johnson has his head bowed, his head down, but obviously this is just part of the show, because you're going to hear him lie in a moment. So this lady uses her bus pass to travel on the bus in order to keep warm, or to avoid using power at home, the light or the heat in her home. So she realizes, okay, if I go out, get on the bus, stay on the bus for a few hours, I can save some money. I don't have to switch on a light at home, or I don't have to switch on the heating at home. Wait to hear Boris Johnson's response to that.
What else should Elsie cut back on, in your
Well,
opinion?
I don't want Elsie to cut back on anything. Let's talk about Elsie and what we're doing. And just remind you that the 24-hour Freedom Bus Pass was something that I actually introduced.
Which is a lie, because the bus pass was brought in either in 1979, or it was brought into... There was a bill, there was an act in 2007. But this is not something that Boris Johnson brought in. This is a lie, okay? There was something that happened back in 1979, but there was also a bill, an act in 2007 that came in. But anyway, even if let's imagine Boris Johnson is not lying here, but his response to somebody who's using a bus in order to keep warm is, well, isn't that great? In his eyes, yeah. So isn't that great because I brought that in? This is insane. Somebody is relying. It'd be like saying, we've just heard that somebody lives in a trash can in order to keep warm, and the rubbish keeps the cold out. And Boris Johnson's response would be, see, isn't it great that I changed the times when the trash is thrown out so that these people can stay in their trash can a bit longer? Something like this. It's a stupid analogy, but is basically the same thing. Where, yeah, isn't it great that this woman can stay on the bus for 24 hours because she doesn't want to stay at home because she can't afford to heat her home, or she's worried about using the lights because she's not sure whether she'll actually be able to pay the bills. That the fact that she stays on a bus is some sort of benefit, is some sort of wonderful thing to point to. It's like Jacob Rees-Mogg pointing to food banks and saying they're uplifting.
Not imposing a windfall tax on the fuel companies.
If you put a windfall tax on the energy companies, what that means is that...
What it means is you will have cash available that you can hand over to people. You know? That's what you would have a huge amount of money. These energy companies have said, we don't know what to do with all this cash. You can say, well, we know what we'll do with it. We'll tax you and we'll transfer this money to people who actually need it. People like the 77-year-old woman who can't wait for Boris Johnson to get his finger out of his you-know-where and get to work. She can't wait for new energy technology to come on stream. She needs support now.
You discourage them from making the investments that we want to see.
Companies make investments if they think they can make a profit. Companies do not invest if they think, well, we're going to make a profit, but we're going to have to pay a low tax on that profit. That's not how investments work. You invest in something if you think you can make a return on that investment. Obviously, these companies have realized before this, they didn't turn around and say, okay, now we're going to invest because there's an energy crisis, because we can make a killing. No, these companies have been investing for years. So they've been investing when the profits were not so high, and they're investing when the profits are extremely high. But if you increase the taxation on them, they're not going to say, well, we're not going to invest in the UK anymore. This is ridiculous. It's a stupid argument. These companies are not going to cut investment because there's a tax on their profits. If they're making a profit, it means the company is doing well, the investment is working. If they were making losses, but you're not going to tax their losses because they can write them off. And I'm not a bloody economist.
That will, in the end, keep energy prices lower for everybody. There are measures that we put in place to help people.
So if we don't tax their profits, that will keep the energy prices low. Okay, I don't get that.
I'm not going to pretend to you,
can't say anything to help
I'm not going to
Elsie,
pretend to no, because what we that we put in place to help people. But I'm not going to pretend to you,
can't say anything to help
I'm not going to
Elsie,
pretend to no, because what we are doing is making sure that we take the steps now to invest in our energy supply. You'll get back to your point about the energy companies, to ensure that we have the supply for the medium and the long term.
For the medium and the long term. How does it help people today? Now, unfortunately, in this clip, I think they cut it out, or maybe I missed it. But there was a point raised. Elsie, the elderly lady who's 77, she, in the other clip, what happened was Suanna Reid pointed out that this elderly lady has applied to everything, and she's not eligible for certain benefits because of the situation. She's not able to apply for these benefits. So what can she do? What advice would you give to her? And this was a wonderful question to ask, because you're not asking Boris Johnson, what are you doing? You're asking, what can she do? What advice can you give? And this should be this is a golden question to ask politicians. You ask politicians, what should this person do? Not what do you ask Rishi Sunak. And this is something I wish if I was a journalist, I would have been asking Rishi Sunak this question. What advice do you have for people who are struggling at the moment? Now, obviously he can't answer that because he doesn't understand what struggling is. He couldn't say something like, well, maybe you should cut back on this or cut back on that, for two reasons. One, he wouldn't understand that. And the second is, it would be extremely embarrassing. It would be extremely out of touch, I should say, for a multi-millionaire or quasi-billionaire to suggest that people should be cutting back on this or that. Because people would be saying, you don't have to do that, but we do. And that's your advice to us. So you're not going to provide us with the support we need. Then at least tell us how we can get by. Obviously, Boris Johnson is not someone who understands how to save money. He just, when he has a financial problem like expensive wallpaper because his girlfriend wants to put up expensive wallpaper that maybe he disagrees with, what he does is he calls up a Tory donor. Imagine that. Imagine in your own life, a big bill comes in. You don't know how you're going to pay for it. You just call up a Tory donor and they'll pay for it for you. They'll pay the bill for you. Imagine your partner goes out and, maxes out the credit card on some wallpaper or something, and you look at the credit card bill at the end of the month. You say, how are we going to pay for this? This is insane. We don't have this money. And you go, well, take a deep breath. It's okay. Nothing to worry about. I just call a Tory donor and they will pay it on my behalf. That's Boris Johnson. and he's, and then he's asked, what advice can you give to people who don't have a Tory donor to back them up when they spend too much money? Richard Turner, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max, would be interesting to know how many Tory MPs and donors and shareholders are in energy companies. Could explain why they are protected by him. That's actually a very interesting question, and I want to do a bit of research in that, because that I think it could explain a lot. It could also be the case that they just don't want to appear to be taxing these companies because it's a policy that the Labour Party have been campaigning for or been pushing for. So it would look like oh look, we're stealing a Labour Party policy or a Labour Party suggestion, and it would look bad for the Tories. But many Tories don't like the idea of taxing companies. They prefer taxing poor people, like increasing universal credit. Increasing national insurance contributions. It makes more sense to do that, but don't touch the companies. So there is a general idea: we reduce tax on companies, on corporation tax, things like that, because these are the people. These are our friends, okay, and they either donate to the party or we have connections to them. And I think you're probably onto something there, Richard. We have a super chat. I also from. Yes, sorry, I want to see the other one from Tom Lake. Thanks so much, Boris Ski. Well said. Thanks very much for that. Veronica, thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Alexa, it's great to have you on. Thanks for that super chat. On a Glasgow street, I found a man passed out in a doorway. I called an ambulance. Over 2 hours later, no ambulance. A social worker came and waited with the man so I could go home. 2 hours. What if this person had a heart attack? Okay, passed out, we don't know the reason, but it could be the difference between life and death. It's it's really sad, because these public services are paid for by the taxpayer in order to provide people with the services they need. If there's a problem, what is the cause of this problem? Then try and fix it. Fix it at the root. Invest in the healthcare service. Make sure there are enough staff available. Provide the visas necessary. Encourage people to get into these sectors, into nursing, into paramedics, into paramedicine, into medicine in general. Encourage people. Have a drive, but you need to invest in that. You need to provide the funding available, necessary. Bursaries for nurses, for example, that has been cut over the last number of years. Boris Johnson, of course, lying about it, saying it has been increased when in reality it has been cut. And there also has to be more respect. I'm not saying about anyone here, but generally there's a lot of disrespect towards medical staff because of the delays and the cuts. So people arrive in the hospital, they want to be seen immediately. There aren't enough medical staff available, so they get angry with the medical staff. They get angry with the hospital. They get angry with the doctors, the nurses, the administrators, the people who are on the front line. And they don't realise that this is a consequence of Tory cuts. It's a consequence of cutbacks. It's a consequence of privatisation. And what makes me angry is that the people who are angry are likely to turn around and vote for Boris Johnson because he's doing his best. They're likely to turn around and vote for the Tories because Keir Starmer had a beer. I'm going to vote for Boris Johnson because he got Brexit done. This is the problem. So I just want to cover some more... let me close that. I just want to cover some more things on the election. It says here, afternoon summary, Boris Johnson has used a major TV interview to signal that he is opposed to bringing forward benefit rises to help people with the cost of living because it could be inflationary. So... inflation is rising. Inflation, thanks so much, Alexis, for that super chat. Inflation is running at, I don't know, is it 7, 8, 9%? It's heading in that direction. It's heading towards 10%. But let's say inflation is at 7%. Well, if you don't provide extra benefits for people, they're going to automatically get poorer. And it doesn't matter if people are working or if they're on universal credit or on legacy benefits. If people's incomes do not rise to meet that 7%, then they're poorer. That's simple economics. So Boris Johnson's response is, well, we can't give people more money because that would drive inflation. But inflation is not currently being driven by rising wages. It's not because people have more money in their pockets. People are cutting back. The rising of inflation is because of Brexit and because of energy prices. If businesses are trying to import goods from the EU, okay, and there's all this extra paperwork that has to be completed and the extra costs related to importing goods or exporting goods. Either way, Brexit is creating costs. If it's costs on the EU side, they're passed on to the UK importer. If it's a UK exporter, that cost, and I have a video dropping tomorrow about farmers in Scotland who are talking about a 6% price cost increase for them. So if a farmer who's at the very beginning of the supply chain sees a rise of fertilizer, things like this, which has gone up, then that's passed on to the consumer. But giving people more money isn't going to drive inflation. But Johnson seems determined just to keep people as poor as possible. Says he conceded that the government had not done enough to provide people with the help they needed, but although he said there is more that we can do, he said nothing to indicate that what this might involve. Yeah, we can do more, but I'm not going to tell you what or when further support might be provided. So I think he wants to get past the election first, and then they'll decide whether they're going to provide support or not. Labour said that in an interview, Johnson came across as narcissistic and out of touch. Yes. Talking about how a 77-year-old it's perfectly fine for a 77-year-old pensioner to use the bus to avoid paying bills. For him, it's perfectly fine. Excuse me. Johnson also told the Ukrainian parliament that there should never be peace settlement imposed against the will of the Ukrainian people, calling for the fight to hold back Russian forces, Ukraine's finest hour. I agree with him on that. Legal challenges to the policy of deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda could be a reason why the plan has not yet, as intended, started to deter unofficial channel crossings, Downing Street has said. So they're blaming the lawyers. this policy is potentially illegal. It breaks international law. Refugees and asylum seekers are supposed to be processed in the country where they arrive. So if they arrive in the UK and they claim asylum in the UK, then they should be processed there. It's breaking UN conventions to send them to Rwanda. And I think this is going to end in a disaster, and you're going to see a scandal on the level of the Windrush scandal once again. You have people who make these policies and don't care about the consequences later on because they're not going to be punished. And then some civil servants will be dragged in front of a court sometime later. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. We need public computer models of the economy to predict the impact of various measures in a meaningful way. That's a very good idea, yes. Instead of at the moment you have think tanks, right-wing think tanks generally saying, no, we can't give more people, poor people more money because they'll spend it on, drink and cigarettes and stuff like that. Thanks to that super chat. Gareth, thanks once again. A homeless person. I have to sleep in a bin. Boris Johnson. Well, isn't it great that my party has cut bin collections? Find out from him. So, we laugh about that, but that's what Boris Johnson would say. That's basically what he said. My party has cut the bin collection, so there are more bins for people to sleep in. We laugh, but otherwise we cry. Thanks for that super chat. Keir Starmer has accused the Conservatives of mudslinging over allegations he broke lockdown rules after a photograph emerged of him drinking a beer with staff in a constituency office last year, where the rules were different. BP's profits more than doubled to $6.2 billion or £5 billion in the first 3 months of so not for the entire year, the first 3 months, £5 billion in profits, adding to pressure on ministers to impose a windfall tax to aid households struggling with soaring energy and fuel bills. That £5 billion, that's their profits doubled to £5 billion. Like, even if half of that, of course they wouldn't take half, but let's say even half. If half of that was taken, £2 billion, that could go some way to help people out. But a windfall tax will only cover for this year. Will cover for a short period of time. There needs to be something put in place to provide people with long-term support. It says here, Johnson claims government economy bursting with high-wage jobs. He's living in another reality, and levelling up could make UK most prosperous place in Europe. Johnson now is giving an interview to BBC Radio Wiltshire. Graham Rogers is presenting. It says here, question, people are having problems with the cost of living. Why should they trust you to deal with it? Johnson says Conservative councils deliver better value for money. Okay, but people are struggling now with the cost of living. What do you do? Why should they trust you? But you have cut funding to our local councils during your time as Prime Minister. That is all the more reason to have councils that spend money more wisely. So you've cut funding to councils. So Johnson said, well, then they'll spend money better. So the councils have to provide services to the public. That's their job. So if you cut their funding, then they provide fewer services to the public. Or they provide the same services, but to a lower standard. It either works that way, or you force councils to raise taxes or to issue more fines or something like that to find other ways to raise finance. Well, it would make more sense for central government to provide councils the funding they need. Then they wouldn't need to cut services, or they wouldn't need to impose taxes on people. He says he knows it's tough for people. The government needs to help people in the short term, and it's been done with £150 off council tax and £200 off bills. Yes, but not everyone is eligible for the council tax cut. And £200 off bills, that has to be paid back. Yes, says Johnson, but he says the money is helpful anyway. Yeah, we're going to give you this loan that you can't refuse, and you'll have to pay it back, but it's helpful anyway, you know. He claims the economy is absolutely bursting with high-wage, high-skilled jobs. This is different from the past, he claims. Then why is there a cost of living crisis if there are so many high-wage jobs? Why are people relying on food banks at a record level if there are so many high-wage jobs? We have long waiting times in Wiltshire for ambulances. What will you do about that? Johnson says the government is investing in the NHS. Okay. But what about the ambulances now? What are you doing to fix that? He says hospitals not being able to discharge patients is the problem. And why can they not discharge patients? Because there is no support in the community. Why is there no support in the community? Because there aren't the staff available. Why are there not the staff? Because many trusts don't have the money, and many care homes don't have the staff available because of the ending of freedom of movement. I don't like to be a hammer. They say the hammer, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But when it comes to Brexit, a lot of these things are Brexit nails. Not directly, but indirectly. Maybe I'm sounding extremely paranoid. Johnson says he's glad. Sorry, there's a lack of care beds. What are you doing about that? Johnson says he's glad Roger asked. The government has a plan for care. People won't face catastrophic bills for care. This is a government that delivers big things, he says. So what sort of answer is that? What are you doing about the lack of care beds? Why do you want to carry on as Prime Minister? Because I have a massive mandate to deliver, Johnson says. He says if he can get on with his agenda in investing in infrastructure, skills and technology, that will deliver growth and prosperity for people, he says. Boris Johnson has been Prime Minister for 3 years, more or less. Short of 3 years, 2.5, 2 3/4. But what has he delivered? Brexit. He's got Brexit done. He says he wants to level up. If he can do that, we will be the most prosperous economy in Europe. It says, at a quick glance at the statistics will show to achieve that within the next half century, let alone within the lifetime of the government, would be nothing short of America. But it sounds good. That's the whole purpose behind that. It sounds good. So guys, I'm really late for our comedy moment because I ranted on for a bit there. So I'm going to invoke it now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back in just a second for some more shenanigans.
Hello, Richard Branson here. Oh. Oh, 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 yeah. So many NHS contracts in this land, 1 or 2 you might not get, but you can always sue them as your brand, plunge even further into debt. Ooh, yeah. Buy another jet, yeah. Ooh, save your money for the bills from Virgin Care. In the end, we'll be the only ones there. And when you get old and start losing your hair, you can sell your home for healthcare. Or we'll send out thoughts and prayers. Oh, hooray, Blair. Dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba, dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba, dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba-doo. Yeah, yeah, dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba, dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba, dosh, ba-da-ba-da-ba-doo. Yeah, yeah. Said, oh yeah, in and dosh is gone. Yeah, hey, yeah. Spread your money around your subsidiaries. No profit means no tax. Keep donating to all the right MPs, and the government's got your backs. They'll even stave off the collapse of fly-beaten dosh, 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 do. Yeah, yeah, in dosh is gone. In dosh is not there. In dosh is gone. In dosh is not there. Through health and rail and air. Oh, I'm a billionaire. Yeah, dosh.
Mr. Branson, I've got the...
I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, something went wrong there. Let me bring up the other page. Just moving on to the cost of living crisis.
I don't think this would work.
So, that's Hanson. As I said before, one of the ways this could be dealt with would be a windfall tax. And here you're going to have here's a caller who has bought, it seems, Boris Johnson's Kool-Aid, has been drinking the Kool-Aid, has been drinking Boris Johnson something. And he believes, no, it's not necessary to support a windfall tax on energy companies. Let's hear what he has to say.
Work. Why?
No, windfall taxes are a deterrent to any big company, because what will happen eventually is you put a windfall tax on a company like BP, and for whatever reasons they say their profits won't be hit now, they will find a reason in time to come. But what it would deter in the near and future is big companies investing within the country, because they'll say, if we do extremely well, you're just going to hit us with a windfall tax.
So we shouldn't help people now because profiteers in the future will not... But these are profiteers. They're not investors. You invest, as I said before, you invest to make a profit. Okay. But if the company is making a profit, then it doesn't matter about the tax... Oh my God, I don't even know where to go with this because it just doesn't make any sense.
So all they'll do is limit the profits in the end. They've already paid the tax, and they pay an extremely high amount of tax.
Not true.
So it's already paid for.
Frida?
I would say, again, I'm not a researcher, I'm not an expert, but I am aware that in the last few years at least, BP and other companies have had massive tax rebates from the UK government out of taxpayers' monies. You know, it's easy to say these things, but when you look at it in...
It's important that when a company builds infrastructure, for example, they're able to claim a lot of that back. BP is claiming taxes back, okay? So when they invest in something, they're able to claim some of that money back. This is taxes on the profits. This is after all the rebates. This is after all the taxes have been paid and the money they have received back. This is what goes to the shareholders. If money can be made, they're going to invest in it, whether there's a tax or a windfall tax or not.
In the round, they've doubled their profits this year from whatever for the last number of years. It's just all nonsense and flummery. And in the meantime, people that can't afford to heat their homes and or feed their children are not only suffering, that's also going to impact on the economy. It's just nonsense.
I think this lady makes a valid point. If more and more people are poor, these people will rely on the state. If they have to rely on the state, then who's going to pay for that? The taxpayer. So it's becoming more and more expensive. It's like the UBI once again. Sorry, take out your bingo card. I mentioned UBI. If you provide people with the means to live, they're going to spend it on the economy. They're not going to squirrel it away in offshore bank accounts. They're going to spend it in their local economy. They're going to stimulate the economy. So you give people money. You don't take money away from people. If people say, okay, I have to spend my money on energy bills, then I'm not going to spend it on restaurants, or I'm not going to spend it in a cafe. I'm not going to spend it down the supermarket. I'm not going to spend my money in the local economy. I'm not going to spend, and if some of these profits are going offshore, then it's definitely not helping the UK economy. So wouldn't it make sense to claw some of this money back before it goes offshore?
Lee, who is the government ultimately there to try and protect? Is it
the government is ultimately there to protect all of us, not a set band of people or a set person, but the whole of the country for near on future. We're looking after our grandkids here.
Well, no, I agree. So you think that they've got the balance right here between the protection of long-term energy security versus the very short-term and clear need of those people who are struggling to pay their energy bills?
Yes, you've got to look at 10 years from now, BP, their profits will start plummeting from fuel because petrol engines will be gone.
Well, that's up to them. Sorry, that's up to them to work out a way of making more money if the market changes.
That's up to them. That's the big thing.
And they will, because they're companies, they're large corporations. They have been doing this for a long time. They look at which way is the market going. For example, I saw recently in the UK, Shell, if you believe this or not, Shell are providing charging stations for cars, electric cars. So someone in Shell realized, look, we can also make money this way. Companies who don't understand how they can make money close down, okay? These companies are making huge amounts of money. I'm not completely sold on a windfall tax as a panacea, because it's not. It's not going to fix all problems, but it provides the government with the money. But there have been windfall taxes before. For example, when mobile phone licenses were provided. Mobile phone companies that provided 3G connections, they paid for these licenses, and the government at the time in different countries made a huge amount of money off that. And they were supposed to invest it in the economy, in public services. Some did, some did not. But you don't say we're not going to tax, we're not going to provide people with the means to live. This is about people living and dying, okay? This is not about whether some shareholder gets their cash. So this caller who's calling in is saying, well, he wants to make sure that somebody has this shareholder is protected. And not all shareholders are people with yachts, okay? Many of these are small investors. There may be town councils have invested in these things. Pensions are invested in these things as well. But you're deciding, I want to protect the shareholder over someone living and dying, over somebody's, whether they have access to heating or eating. This is not about, oh, look, there's some new technology, we need to take advantage of it and we need to tax the hell out of it because we can do something with that money. That we can provide some unicorns to people. This is about making sure that people have food on their tables. This is access to money that's lying there that the government could access if they wanted, but they have decided not to. And this crap about investing, it's going to discourage them from investing in the future. No, if they think they can make money, they will invest in it. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. We need the Moondragon social enterprise model. The Mondragon. I'm not familiar with the Mondragon. I'll check that out. Thanks so much for that super chat. Just make sure I didn't miss any other. No, okay.
Leave it to them. But at the moment, we're saying we're going to tax you again. And all it will do is deter big companies from coming around the world to invest in this country.
But BP have said it wouldn't deter their investments.
It would eventually. They'll be...
So we have, Mr. Gammon from down the pub. He knows, he's privy to information within BP that the CEO is not privy to. If BP said, no, it's not going to discourage us from investing in the future, which it wouldn't. Also, this is a windfall tax. It's not a permanent tax. It's a windfall tax. It's for one night only, okay? It's not going to be a permanent thing. but we know it. That's why it's called a windfall. It's a once-off payment. These people don't understand what even a windfall tax is, and they're arguing against it. So they're adamant that they don't like it, even though they don't understand it. And when the head of BP says, "Yeah, well, it's not going to discourage us from investing," no, I know better than this is. And when I said gammon, of course it's a gammon, because this is the way gammons think. Experts, we've had enough of experts. The CBI, the head of the CBI, thinks Brexit is a bad idea. I know better than the CBI. I know better. Who was it? Andrea Leadsom, who was arguing with the former head of the World Trade Organization about how the World Trade Organization works.
But that's not what they're saying. BP is saying right now the 18 billion quid that they're seeking to invest there wouldn't be a penny coming off that, even if they were hit with a one-off windfall tax.
Is this not the same very man who said not so many days back that?
Why can't you just say, okay, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I take it back. This is a huge problem. This is a societal problem, and it's separate from this taxing or Brexit or anything. This idea that somebody has been presented with evidence that's counter to what they originally called in with, and they don't have the honesty to say, actually, yeah, I was wrong. I didn't know that. Thanks for informing me. Thanks, Tom, for informing me on that. I thought it was the other way. I thought it was, I've been reading The Sun or the Daily Mail, and they told me that a windfall tax was a bad idea. But you're telling me how it isn't a bad idea. And you've told me how BP said that it would not affect their investments. Thanks for explaining that to me. Now I'll go away and stop thinking the crap that I called in on.
We've made that much money, we don't know what to do with it.
That's exactly the same guy.
So now he's saying it wouldn't. His wordings are not very well chosen. But he is only the ultimate person at the top. There is other people pushing him along and trends and things.
This caller is incapable of being wrong. So you have the head of BP saying, no, we would reinvest. We would continue to invest in the UK, and this windfall tax would not affect that whatsoever. And this caller says, well, yes, of course he's going to say that. The caller can't turn around and say, yes, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Things like that.
Hang on,
but if you do a windfall tax on
hang on a sec, Lee, but is your suggestion that the guy who runs BP, who made those comments, actually doesn't know what he's talking about?
No, I never said that. He mischose his wording.
Oh, right,
He used the wrong words. So he meant to say, yes, it is a big problem for us. These are the people who voted for Brexit. These are the people who still think Brexit is a good idea. And these are the people who are too far gone. People sometimes ask me, would you be interested to have a conversation with these people? It's absolutely pointless. Absolutely an absolute waste of time. You probably know some of these people. Unfortunately, you may be... some of these people may reside within your family. They are too far gone. They have taken a position, and it's impossible for them to change their mind. This is a perfect example of that, where somebody has started off with the position of BP should not pay this windfall tax because they will not invest the money in the future. The head of BP has said, no, that's not true. We could afford this windfall tax, and we plan to invest in the future because it's a corporation, it's a big company. They're always looking for ways to make money. If it's investing in oil today, it could be investing in solar tomorrow. Okay, they're not ideological. They go where the money is. They're a business. Okay. But you have this caller who can't accept that his position was wrong. And then we don't understand why some people don't want, after seeing the disaster of Brexit, don't understand why it would be a good idea to undo that, to rejoin the single market and the customs union. This is the problem. You have people who are too far gone. Now, I'm not saying that these people make up a majority or even a significant minority, but they do exist, and here it is, a perfect example of that. Magic, thanks. Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there, but Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. It's because tax means bad to people like that. Yes, he's been convinced, he's been brainwashed, he's been conditioned to believe that tax is a bad thing. Why? Well, because the Daily Mail told him, the Sun told him, Nigel Farage told him, Talk Radio told him that a tax is a bad thing. Why? Because a tax goes to help lazy people on welfare, or to help single mothers, or to help refugees, or to help people that you don't like. We've told you who not to like. We've convinced you that these people are your enemy, and we've convinced you also that the government is trying to help them out at your expense. That we're not going to help you, but we're going to help them. And, you know, people don't come to these conclusions overnight. It's after years and maybe even decades of this drip, drip, drip of toxic propaganda forced into them over years and decades. His type think tax equals theft. Nobody likes paying tax. Very few people like paying tax. But tax is necessary to provide public services because we never know what the future holds. You could be doing really well one day. You have an accident. Maybe it's not even your fault. You're driving in your car and somebody hits you from behind. Not your fault. You get whiplash. You have a back problem. You're not able to work. Or your company doesn't provide you with the support you need. The public services don't provide you with the support you need, and you end up losing your job, or you're not able to do that job, and you try to find another job that pays less. You end up with chronic problems because of the back problem. Not your fault, but if there's a good public safety, a good safety, a social safety net in place, then you don't have to worry. But if there isn't, then you struggle, and then you struggle to get access to the resources you need, and you have people like this who will call in and call you a scrounger, because they have been convinced and conditioned to believe that anyone who's looking for support is a scrounger, and that they're paying their taxes in order to facilitate your 3 holidays a year to the Caribbean, to fund your flat screen TV as it was in the 1990s. I don't know what was it, iPhones today, whatever it is. Max for PM, thanks very much for that. Mike, thank you so much for that super chat. Who else is watching carefully the northern elections? Absolutely no news here, but I do feel the shift in the north. Daniel O'Donnell. Actually, I wasn't planning to talk about it, but I think there is something. Thanks for raising that point, because I didn't actually have it as planned for the live stream, and I'm almost at the end of the live stream for tonight. But I wanted to talk about that a little bit. What's happening in Northern Ireland is going to be very interesting, because it's likely that Sinn Féin will become the biggest party. And following the Good Friday Agreement, the idea being was that you would have a first minister from one community, and you would have a deputy first minister from the other community. So the two largest parties would represent the two communities. And that was back in 1998 and following 1998. But over the last number of years, things have changed. And Brexit, we always come back to Brexit. Brexit has really shifted things. And what's happened now is you have the likes of the Alliance Party, which is, in a sense, not unionist and not nationalist and not pro-Ireland, United Ireland, not pro-union. Some say, I think it has aligned itself as a unionist party. But anyway, what could happen on Thursday is you could have Sinn Féin as the largest party, the Alliance Party scraping by as the second largest party, and you'd have the DUP as the third largest party. But under the rules, the DUP would receive the option to become to put someone forward as the deputy first minister. So you'd have a Sinn Féin. So you're going to have chaos. So you're going to have something very interesting happening in Northern Ireland, where you could have Sinn Féin as the first minister, the Alliance Party winning the most votes in second place, and then the DUP third place, but the DUP getting the role of deputy first minister, but the DUP deciding not to put someone forward because they want the Northern Ireland Protocol, quote unquote, sorted out. Now, if the DUP instead take up the role of deputy first minister, which I think is not fair because it should go to the Alliance Party, but if the DUP take up that role, then I think we're going to see less, maybe less rhetoric from regarding the protocol going forward. Maybe I could be wrong on this, because you would have in the assembly as well, you would have a majority of parties supporting the protocol, and I think the rhetoric from the UK government would probably change. Look, a lot of the rhetoric from the UK government has been, we just need to keep Brexiteers in Northern Ireland on side, because they have the largest party in the Stormont Assembly at the moment, the DUP, and we can use them. But when the biggest party is Sinn Féin, the second biggest party is the Alliance Party, and both of those are pro-protocol, anti-Brexit, of course, then it's difficult for the UK government to say, yes, we're focusing on getting rid of the protocol, or the protocol's not working, or it needs to be replaced, or it needs to be fixed, because you'd have a clear majority, democratic majority in support of the protocol. So I think the DUP's position may change following the election, and they're going to move on to something else. The protocol, the ability of political parties to get rid of the protocol after Thursday, if Sinn Féin and the Alliance Party both win first and second place, it's going to be extremely difficult for the anti-protocol parties to do anything. Their last throw of the dice was this week, and if it fails this time, and once again, and I've mentioned this in the interview I had with Kevin Maher, was that this whole unionist has changed so much over the last number of years, and they've lost so much. They've given ground, and they're starting to realize that, our days are over. The union is coming to an end, and more and more non-politicians are starting to see that. Thanks for that super chat, Mike. Anyway, we're almost at the end of the stream, so there was another story I just wanted to cover before we finish. No, where is it? One moment. There's two more stories. Just wanted to cover a little bit on Ukraine. It says here from Metro, more than a quarter of Russian units in Ukraine are now combat ineffective. So it says, the Russians are trying to make a breakthrough in the Donbass region, and it's not going very well. Russian troops on the ground in Ukraine have taken a beating, with more than a quarter of them now combat ineffective. The Kremlin sent around 120 battalion tactical groups when it invaded Ukraine on the 27th of February, the UK's Ministry of Defence said. But the world watched as Ukraine put up a brave fight, and the British government believes more than 25% of those squads are now unable to carry out any missions. This is despite the fact Moscow essentially doubled its defence budget to modernise its military, and in an operation called New Look between 2005 and 2018. The MOD's said the operation will not enable Russia to dominate Ukraine. Failures both in strategic planning and operational execution have left it unable to translate numerical strength into decisive advantage. This is a picture of some soldiers that were captured, British soldiers actually. Russia's military is now significantly weaker, both materially and conceptually, as a result of its invasion of Ukraine. Recovery from this will be exacerbated by sanctions. This will have a lasting impact on Russia's ability to deploy conventional military force. There seem to be rumors that there may be a coup at foot in Moscow. There may be an attempt to remove Putin, but we've been down this road before. It does mean that there's less and less support for this war in Russia, and there have been reports of attacks on sites in the Russian Federation as well, places around Moscow. So it's not just military strikes from Ukraine, but there are people within Russia sabotaging sites in Russia, which is interesting. So it's difficult for us to understand what's happening in the Russian Federation because everything is tightly controlled. But if Putin were to go with declaring war on Ukraine, this would allow mass mobilization, and then conscripts would be brought in here. Some people are claiming this would be the end of Putin because it would turn the entire population against him, because I thought this was a special operation. Now you're declaring war. That means it's not working. It's not going right. Why should we be sending our soldiers, our sons and daughters, into this meat grinder? The Freckle Puny, thanks so much for that super chat. The Russians are war drunk without the vodka. Very good analogy. Yes, very good statement. They are. They believe they could go in. It seems the operation had a budget of $1 billion. Putin had believed he'd be in and out in 3 days. Then it went. I think it's currently at something like $300 billion, and all this material that has been lost. And a lot of this material can't be replaced quickly. A lot of the material also relies on foreign imports, which have been pretty much blocked. Don't know how long Putin can last, but the longer this goes on, the more support there will be for his removal within the country. It's these types of dictatorships don't last. I know people may see Russia as an outlier, but I don't know if that's the case. So, guys, I just want to cover one final story before we finish. Let me see where it is. No, I don't have it. Sorry about that. I hate when that happens. I thought I had another story here. That's weird. Oh, no, here it is. Sorry. Private renters are being hung out to dry by the government that don't seem to care. It just, once again, it's related to the story where at the beginning of the stream where Boris Johnson is planning to provide a regurgitation, is regurgitating an old policy that Thatcher had brought in the 1980s to allow more people to buy their homes. But it doesn't seem like it's going to work, and more people are struggling to pay rents, so they're not likely to be able to purchase their own homes. So, guys, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you to all to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated. Thanks for all the likes and the comments, and thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. Before we finish, we have our one for the road. I hope you'll see you on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. after the election, so should be some interesting things to talk about. My friend Bowler Hatman is having a live stream tomorrow. He's invited some people on, so if I can, I might jump onto that. I'm not sure how we'll do it, but if I can, I'll reach out to him and see if a few of us can jump onto that, maybe a Zoom call or something, because some exit polls or some information could be coming in. It will be late. I think it'll be after 10 p.m. So, and a lot of the polls, you're not going to see results coming in until early morning or the day after. But maybe it'll be something to talk about. So hopefully I'll be able to jump on that. Do check him out tomorrow anyway. I think he's starting at about 10 p.m. But do check out his Twitter account or his YouTube channel. He should have more information there. So before we finish, we have our one for the road. I hope you enjoy this, and then I'll see you on Discord if you're on if you're a patron. If not, I'll see you on Friday.
Did you just hit a child with a shoe?
Well, I understand that there will be an inquiry into what just happened there, so I think we should all wait and see what the outcome is of the inquiry.
You just hit a child with a shoe. I saw you.
Well, I'm not going to preempt the inquiry. I think we should all just wait and see what the outcome is, but the inquiry has my full support at this time.
You've got the other shoe there. Are you going to hit him again?
I'm not going to preempt the inquiry, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, exactly. The Conservative Party in 2022. So, guys, have a great night. I'll see you on Friday, or I might see you on Thursday evening, if not. Have a great week. See you on Friday. Take care, and see everyone who's on Patreon, on Discord after the stream. Take care. Good night.